Hello, my name's Phil Sizer. I'm the lead trainer from Pain Association Scotland. For many years I've been delivering self-management courses, helping people with chronic pain and other limiting conditions. I use lots of handouts and draw badly on a flip chart, and that stimulates lots of debate and interest. But one of the ideas I've had at the back of my head for a long time has been to try to develop a diagram, or if you like, a one piece of paper thing that you could put on your fridge or just have, that summarized lots of ideas, that brought together lots of different aspects of self-management into one page. And hopefully I've managed it, at least a bit, with this diagram that you're looking at now. It looks a bit overwhelming when you first see it, but there's a lot in it. And it's called Surviving the Day. It doesn't mean literally surviving the day. It means surviving the day, or having the best kind of day you can in a way that promotes mental and physical health. Or another way of describing it is to say it's a diagram that's about promoting health and well-being. Obviously, if you have a chronic condition, you need to do the clinical things that are necessary to manage your condition, for instance, injections and medication, that kind of thing. But this diagram is looking at, if you like, lifestyle. And that for me is the focus of self-management. What does your lifestyle look like? And possibly what are the sorts of changes that you might need to make to your lifestyle to improve the quality of your life? Now, this diagram, I think, is good because it's relevant to people with health conditions, but it's also relevant to anybody. And originally I come from the world of business and had a lot to do with stress management. And there's a lot of things in this diagram that would help anybody who is facing difficult times, that maybe is facing changes and challenges that they hadn't planned for. So you could say that applies to people with health conditions, but you could also say that it applies to people, say, at work when they're dealing with stress and difficulties at work, but also, and incredibly relevantly right now, it also applies to all the changes and limitations that we're facing dealing with the coronavirus at the moment. When you look at the diagram in a bit of detail, you can see that in the middle we've got surviving the day, and then around it, at 12 o'clock it says structure, then at 3 o'clock thinking, 6-ish o'clock mood, and 9-ish o'clock body. And I felt that those are the four main categories that we can look at, but you might come up with some more. And you'll also see that coming off those bubbles, there's lots of other little bubbles. I keep counting it and getting a different number every time, but I think there's about 34 different ideas on there. The most important bit, well, to be honest, it's all important, and I've struggled, if I'm honest with you, to think about which ideas are more important and which ones should be nearer the middle. They're all important, and in the best principles of self-management, the most important thing to say is what works for you is the most important bit of this diagram. So please take it as something for you to play with. For me, the most important bit is structure. And I say that because lots of people in my groups have said to me that one of the biggest steps they've made, or the most helpful things they've done for themselves, is to create a routine, a structure for the day. I sometimes use the Mars bar idea, such that they've got periods of work and rest and play. The reason that's important is because sometimes when we're at home all the time, we might work until we drop. Or the other version is sometimes we might rest so much we get worn out by being bored. Now I know there's lots of different versions in there, you just need to work it out for yourself. That seems to be the most important bit, the structure. And then within that structure, you have bits where you look after your body. So that's the health bit. That's to make sure you eat well. You can probably see this to the far left of the diagram. That you work on what's called sleep hygiene. That's perhaps for another day. But sleep hygiene is the idea is to improve sleep. And that you exercise in whatever way you can. I realise not everyone can. And if you can, do something so you can get out of breath. That's to improve your cardiovascular fitness. Also, things like exercise feed into mood. Similarly, eating healthily affects mood, and so does sleep. So the mood bit is that cluster of items around the bottom half of the diagram, and you can probably see there's an awful lot of them. It's hard to pick out any one in particular, but perhaps the most important one for a lot of people in these current times is to make sure that you're in contact with other people, that you increase your social contact, be that talking to people over the fence or maybe through the phone or social media. Another one that I think is really important is to know what your values are. This is about 4 o'clock. Know your values and make choices based on them. That's all big stuff there. Thinking and mood often connect up together. Perhaps if I was to pick out 2 from the thinking section, the one that's a bit cunning for me to point out is to take the advice you give to others, because often we tell other people to do things or think things that we often don't do ourselves. And often the advice we give other people is much better than the advice we take ourselves. And the other one is to watch less news, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the news keeps repeating itself. And if you weren't worried at the beginning, then you'll start to get more and more worried about things that you can't affect. There's another bit to this, which is to recognize, this is top right hand corner, notice when you're thinking the worst. Sometimes we call that catastrophizing, and to get the facts about situations. For instance, watching what's happening in another country sometimes isn't so relevant to what's happening here. I've got Relax Daily. Now, if you go onto the Pain Association website, I've recorded 5 different relaxations that you can access for free as well. And another one that comes up a lot within our groups is the idea of working within your limits, asking for help, and working to 70% of capacity. Now, I know there's a lot in this diagram, and it can be a bit overwhelming to see it all in a oneer. But if you actually dig into it, maybe use different coloured pens. I've been reading this out to you with some bits that I've highlighted to try and talk about. But you might like to go through, and it can be quite satisfying to go through, say, with a bright yellow marker and fill in the bubbles that you actually do. Maybe the other way to do this is to circle the bubbles that you need to do and find ways to do them. And that's why this has been called the Self-Management Boot Camp, because lots of the things in this diagram are, firstly, easy to say, hard to do. Sometimes things that are different to what you would normally do are a challenge to do, and it takes a bit of effort to do them. But that effort is worthwhile, because all of the things on this diagram are about maintaining your health and your well-being. And I hope that's something that everybody recognises they need to do.